we are in the business of building trust. Certainly, talking to a client about their finances is kind of a sacred space. Not like you show up to the weekend barbecue and reveal to someone how much money you have in your retirement account or your budgeting or your retirement goals necessarily. Now, you might brag that you bought
Mhm.
a stock before it, went through the roof or whatever, and you want to brag to your friends about, this great, stock holding that you have, et cetera. But when you really kind of open up and show everybody all the details of your financial plan and talk through the various aspects and even talk through some of the relationships that you've had, whether it's been with an existing advisor, whether it's been a life insurance broker. Yeah, it's my friend's dad who I worked with who sold me all of these policies. And that's not our place to come in to say whether it's right or wrong. We're just kind of coming in at the intersection that we are to review what's currently in place and match that with the client's goals.
Welcome to the 2026 Faces of Riverside magazine conversation series, where we have a chance to sit down and talk with the individuals that are featured in the magazine and kind of showcase them as individuals, their organizations, and the good works that they do. Today, we're joined by Jeremiah Lee and Laura Lee from Tricord Advisors here in Riverside. Laura, Jeremiah, welcome.
Thank you. We're so glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
My pleasure. So I wanted to kind of jump in. I've got a number of questions, but for folks that don't know either of you individually at this juncture, can you give us a little bit about your backgrounds individually and kind of what led you into financial advising?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Jeremiah, do you want to start?
sure. I'll get going. So I kind of came at this from a little different path than a lot of financial advisors. I started off as an attorney doing mergers, acquisitions. I worked at Best and Krieger here in Riverside. I was there for about 7 years. And generally, I was helping business owners buy and sell their businesses. And this often turned into complex estate planning, things of that, all in a finance type sort. Well, I had a deal where I was helping a guy sell a business, and he and his wife were in their 80s, and they were extremely stressed about some really small deal documents and deal items. And I realized my job as an attorney was just to sell the business. That was it. But if I could take a larger role in their life, there's so much more peace and confidence and purpose that they could have. So it was a turning point for me there to say I would love to have a larger role in my clients' lives than just being their attorney. So Laura's dad, my father-in-law, Laura and I are married. We get to do this work together. My father-in-law, Randy, he's run Tricord Advisors for a number of years. And we had conversations for probably about 2 years of saying, what would it look like to transition into a financial advisor role and to bring over legal services as part of that. So often legal and financial interact. Think about
Yeah.
when someone's inheriting funds, anything like that. So to me, the passion was we can really add value to people's lives as far as confidence about their finances, a hope for the future by doing this type of work. So a number of years ago, I transitioned from the law firm and joined Tricord Advisors. And that's kind of how I got started in this business.
Well, Jeremiah outed me already because we are a family owned business. I guess I would say that people and planning have been in my blood for my whole life. Jeremiah and I are both Riverside natives, born and raised here. Like you mentioned, my dad founded Tricord Advisors. He's been in the financial services space for my whole life. But certainly, as I graduated from high school and went away to UC Berkeley and started my career in Northern California, I wasn't quite sure. I just wanted to do what my dad did and walk in his footsteps. So I certainly had internships with different financial planning firms like AG Edwards and Abacus Wealth but I actually stepped into a career for 14 years in specialty coffee, and it was for a global trade association and in business development. And I got to run some really interesting events in a really fascinating supply chain. And when 2008 came and the economy was turning south, guess what? Working for a legally addictive commodity was a great situation to be in so that I could fund our household while Jeremiah went to law school. So there I was building a career in coffee as well as growing my family. And it was as a result of that 14 years that I really discovered my love for people of all different backgrounds and all different places in the world. And that planning aspect is something that really drives me towards organization and maximization. And what I love the work that we do is we get to maximize people's goals for their life by building a financial infrastructure that supports it. And I don't mean to sound like I have that written into like a copy or a marketing spiel. That's genuinely what I love to do. And so when Jeremiah and I determined that this would be the best path forward and that we get to do it together, I went back to school to get my MBA, and we're both certified financial planners. Jeremiah gets to bring that kind of legal hat into the meetings that we do as well. And let me tell you, on paper, working with your dad and your husband, maybe that's not the best idea for a lot of people, but it works for us, and we genuinely love what we do. So,
Yeah.
well, I guess I'll speak for myself. Jeremiah, you can speak for
That's right.
yourself.
No, we're having a blast. We're having a blast. Well, it's fun that we get to work together. We have 4 kids together. We get to raise our family, and it's a partnership in so many different ways, but it's a joy.
Yep.
Okay. So, Jeremiah, I really want to ask you more about that transition for you. And
Yeah.
I know that as you described it, when you're dealing with business owners, family or otherwise types of businesses, that it was about getting the business sold. I'm wondering how much or how often the lack of succession or exit planning businesses do, and how difficult that was for you. And maybe that's part of the big reason why you wanted to make the transition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I would say for growing businesses, which is a lot of our clients, there are people who have found they move from being a startup, are we going to make it, to being a successful running business that's thriving. Often along that kind of timeline, they start having years where they say, "Wow, I had the best year I've ever had, and I don't feel like our life's any better. I feel like I just paid more taxes. I'm not sure how do we get to that next level." That's usually the first phase when they start working with an advisor, realizing there's a lot out there that can elevate the way they're running their business, elevate the way that they're running their finances. So that's probably the first one. And then that second one that you mentioned is, someone as they've run it for years, they've increased the level and sophistication. Now what? Do my kids take this over? Do I sell this? And a lot of those, it's not ideal when it's just happenstance. We'll just see where this takes us, right? Often when they have a plan to say, okay, this is what we're shooting for. And one of my favorite quotes is a Mike Tyson quote. It says, "Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face." And you want to have good planning. You want to make good choices, but you have to acknowledge that life is going to change.
Mhm.
Your plan needs to be flexible. We tell a lot of clients, the sooner we can start making really good choices, the more freedom and flexibility and confidence we can create down the road. So I would say not say our sweet spot, but we have a lot of clients that I think we add a lot of value to is when they're building their business, they've had some extreme success, and they are pre-exit. They've not yet sold it.
Mhm.
That's on the horizon. There's some conversations about that. There's some pre-planning, some taxes, some family planning, all that needs to happen in there to really get them ready for that transition. And as a quick story, I had a client that he would develop and build car washes and then operate them. He had done that for years, and he was getting a little older and he was considering exiting. So kind of what we did was first we did the financial planning, saying, what do you need in life? If you're going to exit these
Mhm.
businesses, what's it going to take to run the rest of your future? We kind of did that math with him. And then we said, okay, let's see what these are worth. And they were worth well more than that. So then we said, all right, let's make the transition. So as the attorney side, as a change hats and help him sell his car washes, exit kind of his operating business, and get him into retirement, as now he has retirement accounts. He and his wife are able to live the life they want. So it's that kind of progression down the road that even if a sale is not on the horizon, even if you never want to sell your business, right? That's the season is when you've got traction in your business, you're growing, you're really building into something successful. That bringing on an advisor and someone, especially who can have eyes towards the exit, I think is really really valuable.
Okay. So you use the term sweet spot. So that represents an area of focus that you have
Mhm.
at Tricord. I assume, and maybe you can answer this question by telling me a little bit more about the overall service offering of Tricord. I assume
Yep.
you work with individuals as well. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like to tell people the story that, if you walked into our firm and you said, "Hey, I've got $1 million. Can you invest it for me?" The answer would be no. Like, unfortunately not, because we don't want to make any investments on your behalf until we know what the plan and the purpose is for the money that you're looking to use. So we always start with a plan. You know, in the financial services industry, there's so much information, there's so many options out there. And I can tell you a lot of
Sure.
times when we sit down with prospective clients, they might have had a pre-existing relationship with an advisor, or maybe at one time they met with an advisor and rolled over an account, and then they said, well, you know, I've kind of lost track. I don't even know who that person was that I worked with before. So I would say we're more of a boutique concierge level financial services firm that's holistic in our service offering. So when a prospect, could be an individual or a couple, walks into our office and we sit down to meet with them for the first appointment, we want our approach to be as holistic as possible. And we're not going to implement any strategy until we have a sense of kind of the whole plan. And so in the midst of that onboarding process, we get to ask questions like retirement. They might be pre-retirement, it might be a long time in the future, or they might already be in retirement. Then we talk about cash flow planning and investment strategy and tax strategy and estate planning, and all of it fits in together into one plan. And as we start to steer towards the maximization of their financial structure for the goals that they have in place, then we talk about implementation. So our goal is always a long-term relationship. And what's so wonderful about still having my dad here in the office every day is he's literally living out that goal of his, which is that we have a number of clients that we've served for decades and walked with them through all the different seasons of life. And so there's really not like an age requirement to work with us. There's not like a certain season of life, but to reflect what Jeremiah was saying, a lot of times we find that we offer the most value to the business owner that's kind of in that growth phase pre-exit. We work with a lot of retirees, either just before retirement or just as they step into retirement. And I would say another sweet spot that we hold is what we call survivors. So these might be children of people that have inherited assets, or maybe it was a widow of someone and they're stepping into financial independence for their first time, and they would like kind of a guide to walk through that process.
Okay, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
That is a fairly thorough description. Can I ask you to be just a tiny bit more granular in terms
Yeah.
of, you described the importance of asking questions and developing a complete plan before any actions take place. Is your ability at Tricord, with yourselves as individuals and or the other folks that are part of the team, you give me an idea or list what those areas of specialty are? What if I'm interested in just taxes, for example?
Mhm.
Granted that I may, after meaningful conversations with you, understand there are other factors, but what are the bullet point areas of focus that you offer?
Well, I guess I'll just start with an overview. So there's, generally speaking, 7 different areas. And so there's cash flow planning and investment. We talk tax strategy, but in our office, we're not CPAs. So we don't do tax filing, but we do like multi-year tax planning. There's estate planning, and then there would be like a risk management or insurance planning. In our office here, we don't sell insurance directly, but we want to make sure you're adequately protected. And now I've lost track. I think I just listed 5. Investment, tax, retirement, cash flow, estate planning. What am I missing?
Yeah. I think it's interesting when we go through these different, areas we work on of how often they overlap. So retirement planning has to do with cash flow planning. Both those
Mhm,
relate to your investments. For us, we, include the estate planning as a piece that I think most people set aside. That they
mhm,
think it's, oh, when I get old and gray, I'll think about that. But it's something that we include from the very beginning, which I think is important to see kind of where you're headed. And the part that not everybody gets or needs is the business advice and business services. That's a big
mhm,
piece of it. Is when someone is a business owner, man, we're talking about what are they holding in an LLC? We're talking about how are they structured. We're talking about what family members are engaged in the business. How are they taking money out of the business? All that, if they're a business owner, applies, right? And if they're not a business
Sure.
owner, then we don't talk about that as much. I think that your comment about if I just needed this one thing, what would I need? You know, for us, we find that because everything overlaps and one thing impacts the another, that for us, it's usually a holistic view. So we have a number
mhm,
of folks we've worked with on one off. Hey, you just need some advice on this one piece. Let's just give it to you and move forward. But for our clients, the people that we have long standing relationships, they're not just looking for how do I get this done? They're looking for who is going to get me to the future that I'm excited about. So they're looking for a person in their life. And that's where I think when someone's ready for that, that's when they come in. And sometimes it's one spouse is very into it and the other is, oh, I guess I'll show up and meet them. But once we get building that connection, they see the value of working with an advisor and setting their whole family up for success. That's kind of
Mhm.
where we find ourselves. And so all that said, it is very holistic. And even though we have various categories that we walk through, we find that these blend together to create a full picture that is really just thrilling for a client.
Mhm.
Okay, so I kind of want to follow up on the CPA insurance portion of the answer
Yeah.
of the last answer that you gave, Laura. But before I do, can you, and please remind me to ask that question, but
Okay.
I want to kind of better understand your individual roles within Tricord.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, I can start. So, Laura and I are both owners of the company. We're both, executive in the sense that Laura holds the president role. I hold the CEO role on the running the business, owning the business. But in the day to day operations, we're both financial advisors, and so we can both walk into a meeting and talk through, taxes and investments. The piece that's slightly different is when we have legal items. I kind of bring that background and that experience. But I think the one piece that is really unique, I think, in this is because we get to do this work together. It's very common that one spouse, and especially a married couple, they have different relationships to money. They have different histories of money. They have different feelings around money, and then we get an opportunity to make a safe space where people can ask all the questions. All the
Mhm.
questions they think are smart and clever, all the questions they think are kind of naive to even be asking. But providing a safe place for people to really be united. One of my favorite things is when someone leaves a meeting and two spouses feel united, they feel connected, they know what their future looks like, and they're excited to go get it. To me, that's a huge piece. So we do that work together. There's a lot of meetings that we take together, even though individually we could just take them separately. But I think there's a lot of value in creating a conversation that is robust and meaningful for clients. So we do a lot of this work together, even though we have slightly different roles. But so I guess my piece is the legal side. I think Laura brings a lot of other value to the table. That's one piece that I bring.
Yeah. Here at our firm, we're about a baker's dozen, right? So our staff is about 13 people in total. If you were to come into our office to meet with an advisor, you would meet most likely with myself, Jeremiah, and or my dad, Randy. So we're the three certified financial planners. We do have five on our team in general, but the three of us are forward facing. In other firms, you might be relegated to working with just like one specific advisor. We don't delineate our clients in that way. We share all of them. So if somebody were to come in, they might have a past relationship with one of the advisors, and so it might just be more natural for them to meet with Randy or Jeremiah or myself. But oftentimes, like Jeremiah said, we're meeting with our clients together. Just kind of depends on schedule and what the topic is that they want to meet on. So,
Okay, thanks for that. So I was able to remember my question. So let me backtrack just a second. I love the term holistic in terms of how you describe the overall offering or support that you provide to clients. You mentioned, Laura, specifically. You gave an example of using my terms, tax advice, but we're not CPAs,
right.
insurance advice, but we're not insurance agents. Is it safe to assume that if you and I sat down, if the three of us sat down and came up with a plan for my business, and one of the things that I need is some modifications to my tax approach, if you will,
Yep.
forgive my lack of terminology, or there needs to be some adjustments or additions to the various types of insurances that I hold.
Yeah.
Do you work with my tax person
Yeah.
and or my insurance person? And
Mm.
perhaps, how do I put this? Would you help me also assess that those two resources are in
Perfect.
fact good resources for me to
Yeah.
continue working with?
You're teeing this up. I couldn't have done it any better myself, Norm. That's perfect. Absolutely. So, a lot of clients that we work with already have a group of professionals that they've worked with throughout the season of life that they're in. So, it might be that they already have an attorney that's developed an estate plan for them, or they might have a CPA that they've worked with for years. And so, when we come alongside to kind of look at the whole plan all together, we ask those questions. Are you pleased with your CPA that you're currently working with? And they're like, well, I don't know, like they file my taxes, they get the job done. And that sometimes is totally suitable and they're fine to continue on. A lot of times we might meet a client, maybe the reason why they're coming to meet with us is that there's some complexity that's been added to their life. So they're receiving an inheritance or they're anticipating the sale of their business and they're like, I think I have something a little bit more complex. And so we talk often about, have you outgrown some of the professionals or your team of professionals that you're working with. And so we've got this great sort of grab bag of referrals that we have, people that we've worked with in the past at different levels of complexity. And I oftentimes try to encourage our clients. It doesn't mean that that professional hasn't done a great job for you up until now, but your needs going forward might be a little bit different. And so we just try to facilitate the introduction to some other professionals. And it has to do too with how these professionals are paid. And we want to be open handed with our clients too about like, well, what you're paying for this policy, let's say. Well, let's shop it around and see if there's anything else that's available, better coverage for the same or a lower price. So that's just part of our sort of advocacy for the client to make sure that they're maximizing and getting all the benefit that they need for the most cost-effective way possible to do that.
Yeah. And a big piece, I think, is the relationships with those advisors. There's some CPAs that we've worked with, some accountants that are very proactive. They're thoughtful. They're bringing new ideas to the table. And we love to work with those types of accountants. There's others who they say, well, I dropped off my paperwork and they filed my taxes. And they told me afterwards, hey, you should have done this different, but it's too late. And so a lot of times we fill the gap of not filing an individual year's taxes, but looking, hey, next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what should we be doing different that's going to put you in a better tax position? And often when we start interacting with their CPA and bringing these ideas to them, they say, that's great. Yeah, they should be doing that. And my thought is, why didn't you tell them this in years prior? But that relationship off with the CPA tends to be transactional, and I'll get this one thing done for you, whereas we want to turn that relationship into a proactive, how do we make this better year over year? And some CPAs just are not geared for that. And so in those cases, we want to bring in somebody who does have that. The other one on the insurance side, most insurance agents, not all, but most work off commission. It's a very common way that you do that. So when you're trying to have an insurance conversation, often a client feels like they're being sold to or they're being sold on something. And we want to take that pressure out of the room and just say, we don't sell insurance, but we're going to do the math for you. We're going to talk through what you might need. And so we can have I don't say an honest conversation because it's still honest, but a safe conversation that we're not pushing any left or right, up and down. We're just trying to see what makes sense for your plan. And then once we've kind of talked through what you really need, now we can bring in partners or referrals that will help you find that solution and get it done. But I think it's hard within in the insurance space to have really safe, honest conversations, knowing the other side's going to get a commission. So because we're not paid on commissions, we don't have anything like that. It's a really useful interface to have open conversations about insurance because there are real needs there, but having client knowing they're not being sold to, they're not being pushed.
Yeah. So, okay. So that makes sense. I imagine that those can sometimes be challenging conversations. And I would think that and I'm just kind of guessing here, but your ability to convey a certain level of trust in let's just say it's a new individual who you've not really worked with before, and maybe you've had one or two conversations, or maybe it's the initial conversation. How do you help them not just assess the quality of the financial advisor that they've been working with, or with the tax person, or with the insurance person, and manage that kind of delicate nature of it? Because Jeremiah, you gave an the tax person, and some people are proactive and very much engaged. And others, I think you said that the business owner in this case, just drops off their taxes and the taxes were filed. So I, as a potential client of yours, I don't know that my tax person is not a great tax person. I don't know that they're not being proactive when they should be, obviously. And the same can be true for insurance or maybe some other services as well. So how do you help a new potential client first truly assess the quality of their existing advisor relationship and have the difficult conversation? Because I may love Bill. Bill may have been my tax guy for 20 years.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And you can probably see relatively quickly, okay, I don't know how long it takes, but you can probably see that Bill, my buddy that I play golf with as well, is probably not offering me the level of or depth of knowledge and service that I need. Can you talk about how someone identifies, how you identify that with an advisor and
Sure.
or their ancillary support services?
Sure, I'll go ahead and take a stab too. I'm sure Jeremiah has different ideas too of how to approach this. I love in your question, there's a lot of different subtopics that we could talk about, but you started this question with that word trust. And I think it's interesting we are in the business of building trust. Certainly, talking to a client about their finances is kind of a sacred space. We call it often. It's not like you show up to the weekend barbecue and reveal to someone how much money you have in your retirement account or your budgeting or your retirement goals necessarily. Now, you might brag that you bought
Mhm.
a stock before it, went through the roof or whatever, and you want to brag to your friends about, this great, stock holding that you have, et cetera. But when you really kind of open up and show everybody all the details of your financial plan and talk through the various aspects and even talk through some of the relationships that you've had, whether it's been with an existing advisor, whether it's been a life insurance broker. Like just today, we were talking to a client and he said, "Oh, yeah, it's my friend's dad." Who I worked with, who sold me all of these policies. And that's not our place to come in to say whether it's right or wrong. We're just kind of coming in at the intersection that we are to review what's currently in place and match that with the client's goals. So I still like to come back to that idea of like, you can't microwave trust. It's going to take time. And there's a word in our industry, fiduciary. It's in other industries as well. But the certified
Sure.
financial planner certification holds you accountable to that fiduciary standard, which means that we put our clients' interests first. And a lot of people can call themselves fiduciaries, but actually seeing it play out is one thing I would caution any prospective client or existing client of a financial advisor to make sure that they're listening for. Is this really in their best interest or is it in mine? And so oftentimes as the conversation evolves and we get to know each other more and then we get kind of into the inner workings of, let's say, tax strategy, we're revealing things like, are they charitably minded? Do they plan to sell their business? Do they want to own real estate? We're talking passive income. We're talking like a broad-based strategic plan. And then it comes down to like the implementation. A lot of times kind of it just becomes obvious or apparent. Is that current insurance broker still offering you the best deal? Are they proactive in the ideas that they're bringing to you? Again, like maybe that CPA has served you really well up until this point, but now they're not informed of all these strategies that we've talked about. Are they the best fit to like implement those strategies? So we never want to steamroll or bombard. We kind of want to walk through the process to guide them along to say, hey, this is the best or the most optimized financial structure for where you're headed. It really is a one size fits one. It truly is, which is part of the fun of what we get to
Yeah.
do.
It's so good. Well, yes, part of your question was how do we know? Like, what's our process to find these
Mhm.
things out? So our process,
Exactly.
we call it planning 360 of 360 degrees. And so whenever a client comes in, we start with planning, as Laura said, but we have a checklist that we run through. That we have about
Mhm.
100 different items that we look at in their life to say, we call it a diagnostic. So we just look at everything. We go piece by piece. Our team walks through their life and reviews each piece. And one of them is reviewing their tax returns. And we've had a few that will notice if they have penalties. Just as one example, there's a penalties on their tax return. Oh, well, why did you pay penalties? Are you not paying enough estimates each year? And for a growing business, that's very common. Well, if your CPA is just going off of last year's taxes to give you this year's estimates and never updating them, then you're constantly in a growing business going to be behind and you're going to have to pay penalties in addition to tax. That's, in my mind, that's an extremely easy fix if the CPA is paying attention and saying, hey, I noticed you're growing each year. Let's tune this up mid-year. Let's meet in June and just talk about this and avoid all these penalties. So there's things like that that our team is looking for as they go through the initial diagnostic to say, hey, we use green, yellow, red. Green, these things are green. These are working great. We have another one to say, oh, there's some yellow flags here. Like, I don't know that they're bad, but we need to explore them a little more. Then often there's a couple of red flags. Say, hey, this is extremely urgent. We have a number of clients who are business owners, a lot of kids, mortgages, and they have no estate plan in place. And we say, if something happens tomorrow, you have a big
Mhm.
mess. So let's tune this up. So I think that the diagnostic for us is a starting point that we want to run everybody through that. And then once we have the diagnostic, that kind of leads through our process, leads into our kind of action items of here's the 15 items that need to get fixed or could get tuned up to really give you a future. I think for a client, it's a nice review of where they're at in life, where they're headed, and then a clear checklist. Here are my action items to really get this maximized for where I need to go. The reason we start with planning is because to your comment, we don't know if their CPA is good or not until we review their taxes, until we look at it. So I think that's a big piece. We start with our planning 360.
Okay, so I love the 360 concept. You both clearly have a firm grasp of your business and what you're talking about. There are people come to you, I would imagine, in with different levels of readiness. I have, for example, an aging mother who has
Mm,
a number of investment properties. She has investment accounts. She has annuities, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to use her as an example for this. And I think the core question I'm ultimately trying to drive at is, you mentioned, Laura, onboarding as a process, but before onboarding, there's introduction, right?
mhm,
So you are not going to be introduced to my mom, who I would
mhm,
bring into the office, and
mhm,
you are not going to do a 360 analysis of her, or evaluation of her current circumstances in that meeting. It's just not going
mhm,
to happen, right?
Mm,
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
right.
so, and others may come in and be like, "Look, you know what I really need? I don't know what to
Yep.
describe it, but if I could just have a 360 type of evaluation, right?"
Yeah,
So,
exactly,
right.
exactly.
So there's a spectrum to that, right?
Yep,
So,
different starting
so
points, yeah.
Right. So what can someone expect? Let's assume it's not the I'm looking for a 360
Yeah.
Yeah,
analysis,
yeah,
and by gosh, you guys call it that.
yeah.
But they don't even know what they really want. They just have
Right,
this sense that they need to have a conversation. What does that
right.
process look like?
I love that you asked this question. It's like we had done our homework, which really we didn't anticipate you were gonna ask this question, but so we
Sorry.
record a weekly podcast, and this
Okay.
quarter, what we're doing is kind of cracking open the black box of, like, what does it look like to start a relationship with a financial planner or advisor, right? And so
Exactly.
starting from, like, the very first point, and we just recorded our episode this week about, like, if you're looking for a financial advisor, how do you even start? How do you narrow it down? What's your search? What are some keywords that you're looking for? What are the things that are important to you? So just to kind of roll the tape back just a little bit, is like we would encourage, if somebody's out there like, how do I even look for a financial advisor? We were kind of talking through like some of the questions you would want to ask yourself, like how important is it that you can actually go and meet with this advisor face to face? So that might be kind of a geographic sort of territory that you would set. How important is it that this financial advisor is like super familiar with your niche or the industry that you work in? Like, I only work with dentists, or I only work with physicians, or, et cetera, because there's a lot of financial advisors that are kind of niche. And then it's like, what services do you need? Like, we've talked about this planning 360 and holistic services. There could be people out there that are like, I just need somebody to invest my money. I don't want to do that whole holistic plan, So by no means
Right.
do we say like we're the right fit for everybody. But once they've kind of answered some of those questions and looked through the different styles, whether they want an RIA, which is what we're structured like, or a big broker dealer, then that initial appointment, you're right. Like, everybody kind of starts with a different starting place. Number one, some people love to talk investment, stock, bonds, insurance. Some people are like, I'm just here because I have to be here. I know I have to do something. Like, they're just like
Right.
coming to grips with the fact that they've got to like grow up and do an estate plan. Like, everybody has a different relationship with money, like Jeremiah was talking about before, too. I find those initial appointments as some of my favorite because you're really just getting to know each other. But in our podcast, we were encouraging like some of the questions that you want to bring to that meeting so that you can really we always start our initial time together. It's roughly about 30 minutes to an hour that we'll spend with somebody. We say, hey, we don't want to waste your time. We want to make sure at the end of our time together, it's really clear for you whether or not we would be a good resource to you. So most of that first intro is just us listening, like, what are their pain points? What questions do they have? Do they, what concerns them? What place in life are they? Like, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if that thoroughly answered your question, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the sort of initial meet and greet, I guess, is what I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can tell you also a little bit what it's not. What it's not
Yeah.
is bringing a pile of documents to someone you've never met. Let them go
Yeah.
through all your things, and in 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. Like
Yeah.
if that's what someone's looking for, one, I don't think they're going to get that. But two, if an advisor is giving you that, I don't think they're nearly spending enough time getting to know you and what you're about. As Laura said, that first meeting is we just call it clarity meeting. Is just getting clear on what hurts, like what is not working well. What are you worried about? What are you concerned about? What are you excited about? What are you hopeful for? And then we also mirror that with this is what we do. And if those line up and we and there's clarity for the client, then they can say, yes, this is a great fit. I'd love it. So in your example of, say, your mother or someone like that, we talk through what are we worried about? What are we concerned about? What's already in place? What's been done? And get to know that person. As Laura said here and says many times, you can't microwave trust. It's building to say, are we the right people to step into your life to either elevate what you're doing to the next level, to get you past a certain hurdle, or just to be there knowing that life is going to change. People are going to age. There will be transitions, and you want a resource to walk you through that.
Mhm.
All of those are good reasons to work with us, but that first meeting, there's no calculators. We don't expect you to have any documents with you. It's just getting to know what you need and where we could potentially support them.
So I'm imagining that the complexity probably
Mm.
plays a significant role in the question I'm going to ask. But because of that process that you've kind of described, or as a result of that process, how long does it take for
Mhm.
somebody who brings you the who is ready to bring, let's assume they've had that introduction meeting, right? And they
Mhm.
have enough
Mhm.
trust to bring you a stack of documents as you described, Jeremiah. Does it take weeks, months to put together a cohesive, well thought out strategy that you recommend and they agree with?
Yeah, my favorite answer or my least favorite answer is always, "It depends." You're right, you
Yeah.
nailed it, like, it depends on the complexity, but I'll talk about some just general, like,
Okay.
timelines. So, once we're at the point where the client's like, "Yeah, thumbs up, green light, I want this financial plan, I wanna move forward," that process from the time that they get us all the information, that's kind of the heaviest lift on the client's part. So, once they give us all the data, our team, winds up, we start working on it. It's about 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks, depending on what time of year we're in and how busy, where we can turn around the results of that planning 360 process. And we use that good old red, yellow, and green light just to kind of accelerate what the implementation might look like. Hey, these red light things are the things that we would want to resolve for you in the 0 to 3 month time frame, and then 3 to 6. And so we like to introduce kind of a timeline related to the implementation of the plan, but from the point that they sort of say, yes, I'd like to move forward, here's all my information, it takes about 2 weeks for us to come back with the recommendations and the results of that diagnostic. And then from there, in terms of implementation, it can take anywhere from 1 to 2 months to 6 months or longer, depending on kind of what nature of implementation we're looking at.
Yep.
Okay, so sorry, Jeremiah, if I let's assume we're at the end of those months, however long that actually took, right?
We have arrived.
We've arrived. We got a
We
plan.
arrived.
It's been executed.
Yeah.
And I walk out of the office feeling good about the relationship that I have with you individually, you collectively,
Yeah.
the team. Um, and I head home. How often is there interaction from that point going forward? Is there just an annual review? Is there what if I have questions or some I've had a conversation with somebody else at a dinner party who
Mhm.
indicated that, hey, you should be considering investing in this, or maybe, you should
Mhm.
look at this particular tax strategy. How easy is the access? How often is there
Mhm.
interaction? What can someone expect?
Yeah. Okay. I'm excited to answer this question, but I've probably talked too much already.
No,
I'm
go
so
for it.
sure I can come on in. So, one of the things that I think is unique about the work that we do is we have what we call a proactive service model. So many times, like I mentioned before, we'll meet with somebody that say, like, well, I had an advisor. I don't even remember what their name was. I met with them. I gave them a lot of my money or some of my money, and then I never heard from them. And that is it. Anyways, it was the fuel to motivate the proactive service model that we have included in this Planning 360. So typically, when we're onboarding a client, we're getting to know them, we're going to meet by default on a quarterly basis. And then after that, we'll fall into a rhythm. It might be twice a year, it might still continue to be on a quarterly basis, but there's no limitation, right? Again, going back to the Mike Tyson quote, like, you've got a plan until you get punched in the face. So, our team, especially when we've hired new staff members, are always surprised that, like, if someone passes away in the family, we're probably like in the top 5 phone calls that happen the same day that somebody passes away, right? I'm going through a divorce. My business partner wants out, right? So they call and book an appointment. There's or we can talk over the phone. We have clients that text us on a regular basis, email. So we strive to make sure that everybody gets responded to within the same day, even if we can't give them the full answer at that time. And then in the meantime, for those clients that are like, they're kind of set on their plan. There's not a lot going on. We have a lot of people that step into retirement that are like, I finally get to do all the traveling I've been waiting to do. Don't nag me. I'll talk to you in a year. That's fine too. They're still going to hear from our office. So we try to give them a call, periodically. We actually track all of our touch points with our clients to make sure that they're hearing from us so that they don't forget about us and that they know that we're here for anything that they need. We also love to celebrate big milestones in their life. So, hey, you're having your first grandbaby. Guess what? You might receive a gift from Tricord Advisors. Oh, we know that's your favorite candy. Guess what? It might be at the front desk when you come in for your meeting. I think those little touches are super important and can't be overemphasized enough. It just shows hey, we listen to you and we're learning what's important to you and we want to make that happen.
That's right.
So,
And I think I'll jump in a little bit. A lot of advisors are structured with one advisor and like a support person, and that's kind of how they run their business. And so if you're not talking to the advisor, who's usually busy, you're missing it. You don't have access. You're not there. The way we're structured, there's Laura and I and Randy, and then there's the other 9 of us that are all the staff and the team that helps support. So if someone has a phone call, they're going to get a real person answering, but also they have people who can answer all sorts of great questions, who can move money, who can transfer assets, who can do all the things they need. But there's also access to us, because we have a team supporting us. We're not alone here. So I love those texts. When someone says, "Hey, I was out to drinks with my buddy, and he just said I should have a X, Y, or Z, or I should buy this stock, or I should be doing this." Those are great because we're not thinking that we have any special knowledge. If there's a new idea, yeah, bring it in. Often as we go through it and start talking about it, it's like, "Oh, this definitely won't work for you, and it's a horrible idea for your friend." But we should walk through this. But we love new ideas. We love that direct access for our clients as we're walking through. And to Laura's comment, I'll check in once a year. Man, that is a bummer of a relationship. We talk a lot that there's evergreen fees, right? You're paying for assets that are being managed. You should have evergreen services. They should be happening throughout the year, and knowing that you're connected. So a lot of times, as Laura said, we start with quarterly meetings and then we spread them out as appropriate for that person's season. We tell clients we're not the dentist. You don't have to come see us. But we want to be available to support you as your life is growing and changing.
Well, first of all, thank you. You guys have taken me from coffee and law to a planning 360 plan to my special candy waiting for me at the counter when I walk into the
That about
office.
sums it up. I love
That's
it.
right.
That's perfect.
Yes, right. So, yeah, you guys are great. I just want to say that not having met you before, your ability to convey your knowledge and be easily trusted is pretty fabulous. So, I very much appreciate your time. And is there I'm going to include it at the end of the video in the description, all the contact information and so forth. Is there a question I didn't ask that I should have?
Yeah, I think in this context, you asked a lot of great ones. I think where we're headed, man, we are excited about the city of Riverside. We're excited about our team. We're excited about where we're going. We've doubled in essence the size of our company a couple of times in the coming years, recently as well as last year. So we see that the people of Riverside, the complexity of the financial services they need hasn't existed here in I think the way that it should have. And so there's a lot of folks who I think have been underserved, and we're here in this community to offer a level of services that I think this community deserves and needs. And so we're excited to be in here. Like Laura said, we're born and raised here. We love this city. We love the people here, and are so honored to get to serve this city.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Norm. We so appreciated the time with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great. Great spending some time with you. Thank you.
Thanks.